To order, acknowledge that the District of Tofino operates within the territory of the Tla-o-qui-aht First Nation, Tla-o-qui-aht. Notice to attendees that the meeting is being video recorded and will be published on the District of Tofino's YouTube channel. A notice to virtual attendees to sign up for public comment and question period using the Q&A function in Zoom. To register, participants are required to enter their full name, residential address, and the agenda item they wish to speak to. Through unanimous consent, if there are no objections, I'll move that pursuant to Section 15 of the District of Tofino Meeting Procedure Bylaw number 1229/2016 is amended. The June 11th, 2024 regular council meeting be held electronically via Zoom, live broadcasted on the District of Tofino's YouTube channel, and that the facility provided for the public to watch and hear the meeting be located at Municipal Hall, 380 Campbell Street in Tofino, BC. Seeing no objection, motion is carried. Also through unanimous consent, if there are no objections, I move that the June 11th, 2024 regular council meeting agenda be adopted. Seeing no objections, motion is carried. Consent agenda. If there are no objections, I'll move that items 4.1 to 4.3 of the consent agenda on the regular council meeting held June 11th, 2024 be approved and received. Seeing no objection, that motion is carried. Mr. McCall, do we have anybody signed up for question and answer?
Thank you, Mayor. No one's signed up yet, but I will do an open call for the gallery and folks online. If anyone attending wishes to make a comment to council on agenda items, you may use the Q&A function in Zoom or raise your hand in the gallery. You must state your name, your address, and the agenda item you're speaking to. I will now do the call going once, going twice, going 3 times. No comment at this time. Thank you, Mayor.
Okay, moving on to Mayor's report. I was away at the Federation of Canadian Municipalities and I missed some significant events, and I'm sad about that, but I'm glad we had great council representation. I think the first was the Tofino Housing Corporation grand opening. So I look forward to hearing from Councillor McMaster, Councillor Anderson, and whoever else was present. So maybe we'll do that at business initiated by council members. That's all right. Look forward to hearing all about that. And I know it was a great event. And also I missed the Legion grand opening. So I heard that was an absolute fantastic success. I'm not sure if anybody made it there, but I know Molly certainly did with the kids, and she said it was well attended, a great success. It was wonderful to see the Legion back up and running. FCM, I was able to go to Calgary to attend the Federation of Canadian Municipalities. There was over 3,000 delegates from across the country there, from local government representatives. A major theme of the conference was a new municipal growth framework, because like Tofino, local governments across the country are struggling with skyrocketing infrastructure costs, downloading from the province, social, health, well-being, etc., and are still restricted to the property tax system. So it was great to hear that our struggles, many of our struggles are shared with local governments across Canada, and that our Federation of Canadian Municipalities is lobbying the government, the federal government, to find new ways, novel ways of expanding our revenue beyond property taxation, and indeed to review and revamp property taxation to allow municipalities more flexibility in how they can tax properties. Great plenary sessions on local government initiatives, infrastructure, reconciliation, funding models, water infrastructure. Water was a major topic. It was really interesting to see that the stuff we struggle with, many communities are struggling with. And actually, I was so proud, because it seems to me that this council, the previous councils, our staff have done some remarkable visioning. And we have a C&I levy, which I talk about a lot, which has been in place now for 10 years or more, which gives us funding to fix much of our infrastructure. How unique that is. Canada, our Tofino Housing Corporation came up over and over again and how many communities were asking me questions and how they can replicate it and how they can do something like that. And on and on and on, and even down to, simple things like our fairly recent organizational review and restructure and investment in our staffing, and how that really is ahead of the game. And it was just great for me to be able to share some of the wins we've had in Tofino, how we were able to successfully almost finish building a $78 million wastewater treatment plant on time and on budget. And that is due to our investment in staffing and our excellent staff and simple things like that. And it was wonderful to see all the things that we're doing in Tofino that other communities really want to replicate. And it was also great to hear about what other communities are doing. And I met with many mayors, wardens, deputy wardens from across the country who were able to share with me many of their successes. And so that was just a fantastic time. I was also able to learn about some very interesting funding opportunities that we may be able to capitalize on. Green Municipal Fund has a great multi-billion-dollar investment in urban tree canopies, and they're funding developing policy and implementing tree planting policy. So it was wonderful. And on to initiatives, and I actually have here. It's really great stuff. I was supposed to be reading off this, but feasibility snapshot and adaptation and action funds. And that's for things like helping develop policy, infrastructure, and financing for things like residential rainwater capture systems. And so I was able to speak directly with those entities, and people are quite excited in what's happening in Tofino and ways that they may be able to help. So looking forward to seeing those conversations where they go. Prime Minister Justin Trudeau came in person and addressed 3,000 delegates in Calgary, which is astounding. It was remarkable to hear our Prime Minister speak, and he did an excellent job. It was also Elizabeth May, leader of the Green Party, Jagmeet Singh, leader of the federal NDP, also addressed the council. So it was a big deal. One of the things that dominated so much of the conversation actually was the level of bullying and harassment that elected officials are subject to across Canada, especially women and racial, sexual, and gender minorities. And it resulted in significant recommendation being adopted to lobby the federal government to make changes to help protect sexual, gender, and racial minorities who are in elected seats. And we got to hear many personal stories of horrific experiences that elected officials are experiencing, including men. And it did both within the communities and within councils. And so I just came away thinking that not only am I so proud of all that Tofino has accomplished, through in all of our projects and programs, but how great it is to sit on this council, knowing that we respect each other and we conduct our meetings with decorum, and that we really are modeling with our staff, complement good governments and local leadership. And I just want to say that I was so proud, noting that many of the conversations were dominated by discussing extreme challenges that other local officials are experiencing. And so I do want to thank my council and my staff for that. It is a privilege to deliver a mayor's report like that. That's it for me. Moving on, we have correspondence. Legislative Reform Initiative update. Comments from council?
Yeah, I wouldn't mind speaking to this just for a second. There is a draft letter of support, but the Legislative Reform Initiative started with the RDN, Doug Holmes, the CAO there, and really it's about modernizing the Local Government Act. It really does affect regional districts and their ability to, some of the tools that are not available to regional districts and those authorities to meet their expanding responsibilities or legislation in key areas. So there is a major work that's going on. This letter of support for the RDM request for UDCM to form a working group to steer the legislative reform initiative. That's very much well worth supporting. There's a lot of work happening at the ACRD around this as well. And I suspect we would need a motion.
I have actually.
Well, look at that.
Motion.
Look at that.
In front of me.
There you go.
Excellent. Corporate officer.
Thank you, corporate officer.
But why don't we just go around the table and see if anybody else has anything they'd like to say about this particular piece of correspondence. I just, since nobody else is shouting out, I do want to say how well aligned this particular update or initiative is with the FCM's revamping growth policy, so new growth framework. So I would be happy to make a motion to support this. Staff? All right, then I have a motion in front of me. I move from the chair that staff be authorized to draft a letter of support for a UBCM working group regarding legislative reform for the mayor to sign.
I'll second.
Second by Councillor Steer. Any further comments? Seeing none, all in favor? Motion is carried. 9.2, Mr. Hartman, soon to be Dr. Hartman. And this is a request for a letter of support. Comments from council members?
I think we should write a letter of support. Much as I don't like poaching from other municipalities, I think we have to look after our own. And I think this gentleman and his wife put a lot into this community. So I would support writing a letter of support and hope it's successful. Staying here.
Second, if that's a motion.
Okay.
That's that one right there.
I have a motion to tell you what.
Oh, yeah.
Does anybody want to say anything? We could all say things about Mr. Hartman and his family. But why don't I just pass it over to Councilman Master to make the motion?
I move that staff be authorised to draft a letter of support regarding Mr. Hartman's request for the mayor to sign.
Second. Further comment? I very much hope he's successful. All in favor? None opposed, motion carried. Other correspondence, we have 9.3. We have a letter regarding Sandpiper sidewalk. And before I open it up for council, perhaps a comment from our staff.
Thank you, through the chair. The crosswalk at Sandpiper / South Chester and Beach Road is on Highway 4, which is the jurisdiction of Ministry of Transportation, Highways and Infrastructure. So ultimately, it is their infrastructure to manage. Staff have a very good working relationship with MODI and certainly can take these concerns forward to Ministry of Transportation staff. Ultimately, it is their decision how they manage their infrastructure, but they've been very receptive in the past to concerns from the district.
Super. Comments from council, questions or comments?
Comment.
Sure.
Yeah, I live at this crosswalk and I think that it would be a good idea to advise, have staff work with the letter writer on this, and because I feel it's a concern in that area as well.
And just for clarity, I know that when staff does receive letters concerning safety, especially with MOTI infrastructure, then they do follow up. And so I don't even think this actually needs a recommendation from council. I understand that staff are and will work with MOTI and share the concerns, and ultimately it will be up to MOTI. But as again, I've had a great relationship with MOTI, and I'm sure that they're very, very receptive. Great. Presentations reports. 10.1. We have a municipal hall upgrade.
There's no presentation from staff, but I'm happy to answer any questions on the project.
Super. We're going to open it up for questions from council, and then we'll do a round of comments if there are any.
Timing? Just-
They indicated a 12-week construction window, and so we're anticipating about a July 1st start date.
Councillor Anderson.
Was that just for the renovations or did that include the heating system upgrade?
Through the chair, that includes both. So it's the renovations to this room to create office spaces and a small meeting room, moving council chambers into the newly renovated theater space, as well as heating and cooling upgrades to the entire building.
Question. Is there anticipated disruption to council's schedule or will we operate? Yes.
Through the chair, we have been proactively for some time booking the space at the community hall should council meetings need to be relocated. Depending on the theater renovation timing, we may be able to move in there sooner before the renovation in the space is complete. Thanks.
Question, Councillor Thomas.
Sorry, did we just say that if the budget did include the heating system? Because the report says that it does not include the replacement of the building's heating system with the HVAC system.
Through the chair, the AFC quote or bid does not include the heating system, which is why we're asking to increase the budget by $35,981 so we can have adequate contingency for the general contract in addition to the heating and cooling system.
So, thank you.
Comments, please. Okay, we'll do a round of comments. Just we want to comment about it before we move on.
I just wanted to make a quick comment as you brought up in terms of the conversations around our capital and infrastructure levy. And this is another great example of where the bulk of the funding for this has come from, and well over half. So once again, it's a clear example of the foresight and moving forward with such an initiative. So I just wanted to throw that out there.
Great. All right, if there are no other questions or comments, so
I can move
we'd
it.
like to read the motion.
I move that the contract for Tofino Municipal Hall upgrades be awarded to AFC Industries Limited with an intended price of $675,136, and that the 2024-2028 financial plan be amended to increase the project budget for the Tofino Municipal Hall upgrades project by $35,981 to be funded by the Capital and Infrastructure Levy, Buildings and Structures Reserve.
Second.
By Councillor Steer. Any further comments from council? Call the question. All in favor? None opposed, motion carried. Thank you. Okay, we're moving right on to the Royal Canadian Legion liquor license application.
Me again, we'll just take a moment to get the PowerPoint up. Thank you. So as council is aware, the Royal Canadian Legion Branch 65, located at 331 Main Street, is seeking a liquor primary license with a proposed capacity of 286 persons. The hours that they've applied for are 11 a.m. to 1 a.m. I did follow up with the applicant on this because it is quite a generous time frame, and as I suspected, they confirmed that they don't anticipate serving alcohol through all of those hours, but this would allow for the Legion to accommodate the wide range of events that they may have throughout their operation. They're also seeking a family food service endorsement to accommodate events such as weddings, services, community events where they may serve alcohol, and there's a number of conditions that go along with that, including food service and minors being accompanied by parent, guardian, or responsible adult. And just to there we go. Refresh on where we are in the process. Liquor control or liquor, cannabis and regulation branch provides local governments with an opportunity to comment on a number of different types of licenses, including liquor primary, which is what the Legion is applying for. And there are two options. One is to gather public input on behalf of the municipality, and the other is to decline to comment and allow the LCRB to conduct their own process. So at the This is maybe getting to be low battery here, but, oh, there we go. May 14th, council meeting, council directed staff to proceed with gathering the views of impacted residents as per the district's liquor control and licensing application procedure and fee bylaw. Per our bylaw, a $600 public notification fee was collected from the applicant. Staff prepared a notice to properties within a 60-meter radius, and there's a little graphic there showing you what the reach of that would have been. Notice was posted in 2 consecutive issues of the Westerly for a minimum of 10 business days, and the application was referred to Tofino RCMP for comment. 4 written responses were received. All were in support of the application. One response did comment on noise. I think the exact words were, what stays in the Legion, or what happens in the Legion should stay in the Legion in terms of noise. But they still expressed support for the application, and the RCMP indicated that they had no concerns with the application. This is a bit of a complicated choose your own adventure recommendation here. So the first part is fairly boilerplate. And then there are 2 options here. Council is now being asked to indicate to LCRB whether they support the application or do not support the application. Council is not required to provide comment on the rationale for their support or lack of support, but staff has structured the recommendations with the highlighted yellow there if council would like to provide comment on their recommendation. If you do not wish to provide a comment, you can just leave out the yellow part and just end the recommendation after Royal Canadian Legion Branch 65. I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thank you very much. Okay, we're going to do a round of questions for clarity for staff, and then after that, if there are questions, we can go for a round of comments. Questions? Councillor Steer.
Yeah, thank you. And I am in support of the application. I just had a question. I think you quickly addressed in terms of the length of the hours of the business. You said you had contact with the applicant. I am concerned about that large time frame, and on both ends of the spectrum, the early start and the well, I guess it would be early, and it addresses a couple of different concerns around public health and safety, but also around the noise, the potential noise complaints, and when we're allowing that service to go. So I did look at the hours of operation of a number of the other businesses that do serve liquor, and this would be the latest one. And McQuinna close by does actually close at 12 on the Sunday. So I'm wondering within that report in terms of how it's structured, and I was unclear, is there the ability to make a recommendation around those hours of operation?
Through the chair, council can certainly comment on the hours of operation through the recommendation, which we can put back up there if required. But ultimately, it is up to a liquor, cannabis, and regulation branch what they approve.
Right, thank you.
Yeah.
Question. Great. Any further questions for staff? Mr. Vermont? No. Comments? Any comments from Councillor McMaster?
Yeah, like Councillor Steer, I did have concerns about the length of the license, having some experience working there. Just because the McQuinna goes till midnight, and I know they can apply for a special event permit if they want to go beyond that, and that seems to work quite well. I just have concerns about one place shutting down at midnight and the other place shutting down at 1 o'clock. So personally, I would like to see some uniformity, and if that means increasing them to 1 o'clock, that's fine, or bringing the Legion down to midnight, it's fine.
So maybe a question for clarity from staff. Can I turn that into a question, Mr. Vermont?
Through the chair, I can do my best to answer that.
Well, let me just reframe it. Is it possible to recommend approval with a request to consider reducing it to midnight?
Through the chair, I think council can comment on, they can say that they're supportive, but with the condition, and again, it's up to LCRB how they manage that. I do understand that LCRB is moving away from special event permits in otherwise licensed establishments.
I see.
So managing sort of one-off events through special event liquor permitting, not the district's process. It sounds like that's not the LCRB's preference. It is fairly administrative.
Okay, great. Continue. Councillor Master, you know.
I was just gonna say they'll always do special events permits for New Year's Eve. So I think that's an invalid argument.
Comment. Councillor Adam.
No, I don't have any comment. I would support it either way with a comment or without, so.
Okay. Mr. Steer.
Yeah.
We'll just go right down. That's okay.
Yeah, I agree with Councillor McMaster. I would like to, if we can, and I think we should make that recommendation within the context of our recommendation to LCRB.
Yeah, I'm comfortable with this. I'm not too hung up on the time of 1 o'clock. I'm fine with 1 o'clock, or if not, it's not a big concern of mine.
Yeah, I don't have a problem with the time, but I'm willing to hear a discussion on that if it's a sticky point.
I'm
Thomas.
fully in support of this. My understanding is the Maquina does have a license until 1 and they just close at midnight on Sundays, probably due to staffing, their own personal thing. I don't think the liquor board gives different days, different times. I think that's their own personal choice.
It is.
So I'm fine to not give a recommendation on time. I understand. I can understand them wanting to ask for the same time frame that's being offered down the street. And I would be supportive of them having the same time frame because there is that concern when one place closes, one place is open a little bit later, that you get that kind of exodus and you get that showing up for last call, and that causes some issues where it's probably better for people to be in the locations that they are.
Super. Maybe I have a question just for clarity. The Maquina has a liquor license for 1, but they shut down voluntarily at 12. So that's weird.
Yeah, they have their hours of operation as posted, and that's what they're allowed up to 1 a.m. They do close, and for whatever reasons, I'm not sure, but on Sundays at midnight.
Okay,
Yeah.
okay, that was good for me. Okay, go ahead.
Yeah, and if I could just comment as to the rationale as to why, and I know that, as you all know, I'm very immersed in this particular topic in terms of public health and safety and the implications around allowing alcohol consumption later and earlier into the day. And it has direct, in terms of policy recommendations, is clear about accessibility and timing. So it is one of the #1 ways that we can reduce alcohol consumption as the #1 public health issue in our region. By far, this is one of the key policy areas is accessibility to alcohol. So at a population level, by shortening those times, we in fact have less time for people to drink. So there are direct public health implications. That is why I'm so supportive of bringing those hours of operation down to a limited time. The other area, of course, is around the public safety end of things. And as there was no comment from RCMP, and we know that we have a new detachment sergeant here, but in the past, they have made clear recommendations about the impact of alcohol consumption into those late hours and impaired driving directly as a result of that. So the longer they have to drink, the more implications there are for those public safety issues. As we know, it tends to have other public safety, not just impaired driving, but others, assault and other types of things that are directly related to those kinds of consumption levels. So that is why I would like to see, I'm supportive of the application, absolutely, but I would like to see those recommendations for reduced hours of operation, whether that be 11 o'clock in the morning to start, seems a little early, and to be ending at those 1 o'clock times. There's clear evidence that has implications around public health and safety.
And comment?
Can I come first? Is that right? And then we'll come back to you. Just because I should, but just to give my opinion, I am supportive of this application. Has been running for years. I think it's, in my opinion, it's probably going to give a different service than the Maquina. It's going to be more weddings and bands and et cetera, et cetera. That's my assumption anyway, as a venue. And I can see that the 11 a.m. is probably to accommodate lunchtime service for a wedding, which I can see people having wine. So I think that's probably reasonable. I think it's probably not going to be the party scene starting at 1 a.m. I think that's what it's probably going to go for weddings. That's my guess. So I can see that. I don't think anything good happens after midnight, honestly, but people are drinking, but I'm kind of on the fence. I think that again, it's going to be weddings and bands playing, and I think it's going to be slightly different than the plan. But I would go with the majority of council on whether or not to recommend 1 p.m. or 12 p.m. closure. If the clinic closes at 1 p.m. and they voluntarily close at 12. I suppose if the Legion closes at 12, the folks that want to drink will go to the clinic. So I'm going to leave that one up to council, majority council. That's my comments. But I also want to note that we did ask the RCMP to increase their hours and have a late patrol, which they have been doing in the evenings, and I think that it has been fairly successful in keeping some otherwise overly rowdy folks in line. So that's just another comment. But that again is a service that could come until depending on the detachment levels of service. That's my comments. Go ahead.
I was just going to comment on Councillor Steer's mention of drinking and driving. Luckily, we do now have the coastal ride service operating, which runs later than the taxi used to. And I know it's really nicely well utilized within the community, and I have noticed, just overheard a decrease in people driving themselves home, and everyone appreciates that service. So hopefully with the availability of that service and those drivers, that will minimize people hanging around, because in the past there was never a completely dependable way home, and now there's a speedy, reliable transport service.
And I don't want to digress too far onto this topic, but we've just had a very recent blitz by the RCMP, and the numbers of impaired drivers was staggering still. So whether we have the service or not, there are still the issues around public health and safety. They're paramount. This is where yes, I understand this is one particular application, but I'm thinking of a broader general conversation at a much. So it's difficult because I'm trying to address a population level concern, and we're very much dealing with a very specific request for a very specific, and I understand that totally. And so that's where maybe the disconnect is happening within this conversation. So, and I understand that.
So maybe we'll just go down the table. I just want to see everybody, just preliminary, this isn't a vote, but it just is everybody generally in favor of this application? To start with? So nobody's opposed. So we're really just talking about whether or not to make a comment about a reduced hour. So maybe if we can just, Councillor Thomas, you know something.
I wanted to speak to that. I'm fully in support of them applying for the full time. I think we have a real dearth of nightlife in town, and it's hard for people, especially hospitality workers. You finish, there's nowhere to go. Maybe there's a restaurant you can sit and drink, but the Legion offers an opportunity to play pool and darts and an indoor space to catch up with people. And it doesn't always, yes, they'll have a liquor license, but the liquor license will dictate the hours they're open and give an opportunity for a crowd of people that otherwise end up at house parties or on the beach or sometimes in other unsafe situations. And I hear it a lot from, especially coming from a hospitality background, but also from younger newcomers to town, that there's not really a lot to do in the evenings. And I think that would be a good opportunity to provide them something.
Late pool. That's what we need. It's off color. You guys can call me out of order. Okay, well, maybe what we'll do is we'll just go down the table and I'll just look for numbers of people that would like 1 p.m. or 12 p.m. Let's start with a suggestion or request for a reduced to 12 p.m. Noting this is up to the liquor board. So who would like to see it reduced to midnight? And I'm gonna stay neutral on this one.
you know, well, I mean, just because I've seen some of the problems. Because drink till 1, you don't get them out till 1:30, they hang around till 2 o'clock in the morning, and that's when the trouble starts.
And as much as I respect the idea of providing a venue for people, there are many other forms of entertainment. There are other forms of gathering that does not have to include the use of alcohol. And it's something that I personally don't think we should be promoting as a social activity in this day and age. So when we know it's the #1 public health issue in our region, if not in Canada. So I will be supporting a reduced recommendation.
Okay, so we have 2 councillors for 12. Last call. Okay, I think it sounds like it's 1 p.m. So
1 a.m.
or sorry, 1.
I'd support 1
Yeah,
p.m. to be
1
honest.
p.m. Yeah. Well, you know, nothing good happens after.
But if you want to say 1 p.m., that's fine. We can have that recorded officially.
That's good. Okay, well, it's good. It's good to read. It's good to remember all these things. Okay. Well, we'll see what happens. Okay, I have it, council supporting it as is by majority, so I'm just gonna go and read that recommendation. How's that? So through the chair, from the chair, I'll recommend that respect to the application for a liquor primary license from Royal Canadian Legion branch number 65 located at 351 Main Street, council has considered the following mandatory criteria prescribed by the Liquor and Cannabis Regulation branch: potential for noise, impact on the surrounding community, and that having gathered the views of residents as described in the staff report titled Royal Canadian Legion branch number 65 dated June 11th, 2024, council recommends the issuance of a liquor primary license for the Royal Canadian Legion branch number 65 for the following reasons. Any reasons particular to council? We don't have to have reasons, we can just leave it there. Okay. I've moved it without, we're just gonna strike for the following the reasons. Second by Councillor Thomas. Any further comments?
Yeah, I would like this vote recorded, please.
So just to be clear, now's your chance. I mean, you can make we've all agreed that we're in support. It was just really a question of the timing. So if you want to change, you want to make a comment or make an amendment or something like that, you're good.
There's no sense.
Councillor Anderson, for last chance for comment.
Just on the having the vote recorded, I believe you can only ask for your own vote to be recorded. Is that right?
I'll look to legislative services, but no.
I can check in with council on that.
Yeah.
But for now, I will report the vote and follow that.
Yeah.
I mean, it is recorded on video, so.
Yeah, I mean, I just recall that was how that was used in the past.
Okay. All right, seeing no more comments, all in favor? All opposed? Opposed. Okay, motion's carried, thank you. Okay, moving on. 10.3, temporary use permit for 1101 from Highway Mackenzie Beach Resort. For planning services.
Noon, Mayor and Council. I have a presentation that we've just coming up here regarding temporary use permit application for the property at 1101 Pacific Rim Highway. Into it. So the proposal that's before council today is really for a 30-unit RV trailer staff accommodation campground. Council's seen these sorts of things once or twice before. There is currently an existing 1-unit RV trailer staff accommodation campground operating under a temporary use permit that has been active since 2018. That application was received and was granted for 3 years and was renewed in 2021 and will expire in August of this year. Under provincial legislation, we can only renew a temporary use permit for 1 period of time. However, there's nothing that stops a particular property from applying for the same or slightly different temporary use permit, even if the overall use is the same. So this application was received on February 29th. It was initially going to come to council about a month ago, but there was a little bit more information that staff needed at that time about water, and so it was delayed a couple weeks, and it's now here before council for consideration this afternoon. The location will be at the eastern end of the Mackenzie Beach Resort property. That property is actually split zone. Part of it is a comprehensive development zone that was recently rezoned. I believe the zoning was wrapped up in 2020 or 2021, if I remember correctly. There is the eastern portion of that property that is zoned A1, which is just a large lot residential zoning. Historically, it's been used for storage for the resort. There's also a large Quonset hut. And then as of 2018, it has been used for a staff accommodation and RV trailer campground under temporary use permit. This is the site plan. The individual units that are shown kind of in white are the ones that are currently under the existing temporary use permit. The additional 10 that have been kind of requested as a part of this new temporary use permit application are the ones that are shown in green, I guess kind of in the middle of the image, slightly to the right. So a quick little run through our policy. Typically with temporary use permits, just as sort of a general statement, because the use is temporary, a lot of our policy is a little bit challenging to interpret specifically with regards to the proposal. A lot of our policy points towards kind of long-term land use or future uses that we have. Temporary use permits, as the name implies, are temporary. So we often do look at our OCP and other guiding documents. However, the same weight is not necessarily attached to these applications as it would be to, say, a rezoning application, as again, we are considering it a kind of a temporary land use change, not something that is long-term. However, with that in mind, it is still worth considering a lot of our guiding documents, as we still would not be interested in temporary use for something that we are really not aligned with as a community. So many of the policies within the OCP are supportive of a variety of housing options, including affordable housing, staff accommodation, those kinds of things. There are several notes within the infrastructure section of the OCP where we need to be quite cautious about our infrastructure capacity, particularly water. I'll talk about that a little bit later in the presentation. The ocean interface designation, so this is the designation that the property is within, generally discourages development, but it does have some statements that are supportive of particular types of resort development potentially, and especially staff accommodation. So really within the OCP, the primary attention that staff have identified is really this idea of, we want the housing. It's not in a completely ideal location, but it is an ideal form of housing. But we're also very concerned about water capacity, as many of the conversations around the council table have indicated over the last several months and indeed years and years into the past now. So again, the last bullet there is just a note that the temporary use permit, or a temporary use as it's considered under a temporary use permit, doesn't change long-term land use policy for the area. But again, we want to make sure that we're not allowing something, even if it is only for temporary time, that is strongly disaligned with our OCP guiding documents or overarching values as a community. Okay, no, we're good. So this is within our official community plan. We actually do have specific temporary use permit policy that has some particular statements regarding temporary use permits. Largely what we try to do through a temporary use permit is balance public and private interests, maintain a minimal impact on the environment, achieve some sort of compatibility with the surrounding development, and provide opportunities for short-term land use or economic diversification, innovation, or sometimes we use these as a bridge to a permanent use. So when we look at the public and private interests, the applicant will benefit from essentially having a financial reward from having this on the property. They also will be using it as staff accommodation to supply staff housing for their Mackenzie Beach Resort. As far as minimal impact on the environment, historically the area has been cleared. Our understanding from speaking with the applicants is that they don't anticipate doing any additional clearing to facilitate the additional 10 units that are essentially being requested under this new temporary use permit, should they be successful. So we have very minor concerns about impact on the environment, although we are always keeping an eye. That is kind of a Mackenzie Creek corridor right near there. My understanding is that they're not within the riparian area. They're just kind of to the outside of it. So it would likely not trigger riparian development permit area, although any sorts of clearing within that area, of course, would, whether it's related to this temporary use permit. Achieves a level of compatibility with surrounding developments. There are a number of commercial campgrounds within that area. Bell Pacific Campground, as well as Mackenzie Beach Resort, has campsites as well. Other than that, we find ourselves largely in medium to larger lot residential properties, primarily within the Mackenzie Beach area. This would be a slightly more dense sort of camping use, but it would have a bit of a residential feel to it, if you will. So as far as compatibility with surrounding developments, it's not a standard residential approach, but it does match with some of the other developments, particularly the commercial campgrounds, and it shouldn't be something that completely is incompatible with what we see around there. And then as far as short-term land use opportunities, economic diversification, those sorts of things, it's a reasonable short-term land use opportunity. Staff don't see this as a bridge to a permanent land use. However, the applicant has indicated over the last little while that they would be interested in pursuing the construction of an actual sort of code compliant staff accommodation building there. I believe they mentioned that in one of their letters to council that was included as an appendix in the council package regarding this report. However, they're waiting on my understanding is kind of the outcome of this potential OCP amendment, as well as water conversations, as well as the general challenges with development that a lot of private developers are facing at this point in time. So I wanted to take a few minutes to talk about water, as it's something that we can't really avoid talking about with regards to any sort of development. Raw water capacity, as we all know, it's a challenge and may compromise the district's ability to approve even very desirable development. The proposal does provide very useful short-term form of housing without significantly compromising the water system. Maybe does provide some sort of a reasonable balance between housing need and water supply concerns. So upon speaking with our engineering team and doing a few calculations and those sorts of things, we've kind of concluded that it has fairly minimal impact because it's a short-term development and does provide a fairly useful form of housing. Staff are of the opinion that it is okay to proceed with this without having significant concerns to the water, of the impacts of the water system. This next slide, I believe, has a few numbers on it. Here we go. So the water master plan basically indicates that single family dwelling usage is approximately 1.7 cubic meters per day. So using water usage data from the property and between March 31st and September 30th, the average per unit was about 0.06 cubic meters per day. So that was my understanding is just under about 2 cubic meters per day. So that was that was actually about 1.4 cubic meters per day. So that was for 20 units. Was 20 units of the trailers actually used less on average than a standard single family dwelling. So an additional 10 units would require approximately 0.6 cubic meters of water per day. So that's similar to one person in regular dwelling. That's for basically all 10 units. So the average daily demand for Tofino in Q3, that's sort of our scary dry period of time, was about 1,827 cubic meters per day. Again, I know this is average daily demand, not maximum daily demand. And I know this has been kind of talked about a lot of the council table, but I think it's maybe important to just note that. So there's a certain assumption inherent in using that number. But the additional 10 units is about 0.0003% of summer water demand. And the total proposed development of totally 30 units is about 0.01 or 0.001% of summer water demand. So in short, for the amount of housing that we are potentially getting, for the amount of water that's being used, it appears to staff as a reasonable and adequate trade-off and well within our risk tolerance. I also wanted to touch a little bit on housing, ongoing issue, lower price staff housing, particularly challenging to find. So RV trailer housing has been over the past, coming up on a decade, going back a long time, but more formally introduced in the last decade or so, has been a useful, though sometimes not necessarily ideal, temporary solution. I think most of our guiding documents, and I believe I mentioned this in the staff report, what we're really looking for is kind of code compliant, more robust housing. However, that's been hard to come by, and it's hard to imagine a time to where we will be completely absolved of our need for short-term accommodation options such as those provided by an RV or trailer. The other thing I wanted to note is that the current TUP is regulated under a housing agreement. The proposed TP would be under a similar housing agreement. Initially in 2018, the rent was set at $900. Every year was allowed to increase by the percent CPI. So I believe if my calculations are correct, I think they could be charging $1,092 per month. That's from 2018 to 2024. So about a 6-year increase of about $180 per year in rent, or per month in rent. They've so far indicated that the housing agreement that they would like to enter into would kind of reset that starting amount to 1,050 per year. So a slight reduction from what they could potentially charge based on the existing housing agreement. Should council want to move forward with this temporary use permit, we will kind of update that housing agreement, bring it back for council's consideration, have some further debate potentially about those rates. Any comments are welcome at this point to help us inform that conversation, should council wish to move forward with this temporary use permit. All in all, however, again, I'll just reiterate that at least in staff's opinion, the proposal is a viable short-term alternative given the water and housing constraints Tofino faces. I don't think any of us in this room are proud to be in this situation that we're in, but this is potentially a reasonable alternative given the situation we do find ourselves in. A couple other considerations to mention, pardon me, we would be maintaining a security of $5,000. So this is just kind of a standard element of temporary use permits now that would ensure compliance with conditions of the TUP. Should any of the conditions be broached or make it challenging for us to wind down the TUP, the district could then use that money to go and remove trailers or remediate as required. As far as consultation goes, there were notices mailed and hand delivered to neighboring properties, as well as advertisements posted in the Westerly. We received 12 responses, 10 were in favor, 2 were opposed. I believe council has received copies of all of those at this point. That's the end of my presentation. Happy to answer any questions, recommendations up on the board, as well as some alternatives. If there are any questions, more than happy to answer.
Thank you, Mr. Thick. Excellent. I do have a couple questions, but I'm going to open it up to council for a round of questions for clarity. Go ahead, Councillor Sloman.
One of the letter writers was concerned about the removal of trees. Now this person, the developer, would like to not remove trees. Would this $5,000 ever kind of ensure that they'd be compliant on that part?
Thanks for the question. Yeah, through the chair, that's the intent of the security. Being somewhat candid, $5,000 doesn't go too far in terms of landscaping and replacing trees and those kinds of things. Typically, when people remove trees, particularly in development permit areas, that whole property is actually within the tourism focused development permit area, which has an environmental aspect to it. So anytime you go to remove trees, you should be technically getting a development permit. That ensures that there's largely no ecological damage coming as a result of the clearing. There's also a form and character aspect of it, but it wouldn't apply in this particular situation. So our options when people remove trees that they shouldn't be removing or that are in a development permit area that they need to acquire a development permit for, one is to move through our fine process. So we would fine them. Again, our fining abilities are somewhat limited, so those aren't significant fees. And then the kind of final approach that we would have to take if it was sort of an egregious thing that we couldn't work with the property to rectify would be for us to seek an injunction from the court, and the court would then oblige them to do some sort of remediation activity or something else that might be appropriate. As a small municipality, we generally try to avoid that, largely just because it takes a lot of time and takes a lot of resources and can be somewhat frustrating. So more often than not, we try to work with the landowner as much as possible to ensure that any remediation that's the consequence of outside of the what might be contemplated by a development permit is kind of brought into line. So it's a little bit of a balance, and in this case, that area that's particularly around the Q&amp hut has kind of occasionally overgrown and then been trimmed back. Usually it also becomes kind of a fine balance between what is just regular maintenance and landscaping and what's new clearing. Our understanding from communicating with the applicants is that no major new clearing will need to happen as a result of this proposal.
Super. Any Councillor McMaster?
In the 6 years, has there been any movement towards this bridge to permit change of use?
Thanks for the question. Through the chair, I've had some sort of preliminary conversations, and they did provide some plans of what they were looking for. My understanding is that they were intending to do that sort of around the time that we adopted our new OCP. One of the challenges they faced, though, is the new OCP placed them in a bit of a new OCP designation, and that designation didn't support much development. That's one of the situations that we've been discussing with kind of an ongoing official community plan amendment that's been introduced to council, where we're trying to clarify some language around whether staff accommodations are permitted within that area. So a lot of times there are staff accommodations that are permitted, say on a resort zone, but there may be other properties there that are currently residentially zoned that the owner would like to rezone to allow for more density for staff accommodation. Our OCP currently, our staff's understanding of it is that that's not supported. So we're moving through an OCP amendment right now to clarify that. And I believe maybe part of what's been taking so long is that the landowners are kind of waiting to see the outcome of that OCP amendment to see if it's actually even viable for them to put forward a rezoning application to potentially turn this into a bit more long-term staff accommodation.
So the next question is, I'll look at the diagram, and you could probably have another 20, 30 sites. Are we going to be faced with in another 6 years, another TUP for 40 sites, and then 6 years after that, another TUP for 50 sites?
I would say that's a question that's well above my pay grade.
I'll rest my case.
Yep, absolutely.
Is the reason, part of the reason that this is a different TUP is because they're not allowed to apply for another TUP for 20 sites and they had to change it, make it viable?
Thank you for the
Sorry,
question.
through the chair.
Yeah, no, through the chair. My understanding of our sort of allowance for temporary use permits under the Local Government Act, so from the province, is that we can issue temporary use permits for property. They can be renewed once. There's no language in the legislation that would prevent us from issuing the same temporary use permit to the same property right after again. I would say that's probably just in general not great land use practice. These are again designed to be temporary permits. They're designed to be a temporary land use solution. So in that situation, if somebody's kind of had the temporary use for 6 years, typically we would kind of be looking to them to submit a zoning application or somewhat of a more robust development application to either make that use permanent or change it so that it fits or remove the use. Again, I would say as I mentioned kind of in my presentation, the situation that Tofino's in is a bit challenging right now. We're between a bit of a rock and a hard place. Typically, we would like to see a little bit more robust of a development proposal come forward after 6 years of having this temporary use happen. However, that's not what has. We've received this temporary use permit application for an extra 10 units. Again, to answer your question more succinctly, I don't believe that there's anything in the Local Government Act that would prevent the applicants from simply, applying for the same. It'd be a new temporary use permit, but it'd be for exactly the same use.
May I have a follow-up?
Yeah, you can, sure.
So if so what I'm asking is, if the applicant is not successful in getting this TUP, then would they have enough time to apply for another TUP for 20 sites within the time frame that they have before their current one expires?
Thanks for the follow-up question. Certainly so. I mean, they could probably find out tonight if they're successful or not successful, and then start preparing an application again very soon tomorrow. Their TUP application expires on August 21st or August 24th, pardon me, or the current TUP expires on August 24th. So that gives them over 2 months to kind of have it re-evaluated by staff and brought back to council. So it's a little bit tight, but it could certainly be done. The other thing that I would mention is that typically if we have kind of a gap of a week or two, just because of staff capacity and council meeting dates and those kinds of things, it hasn't been the policy of the District of Tofino to immediately swarm in with bylaw and trying to pull people out of there as quickly as possible. If there's the potential that council will be considering another TUP.
Questions for clarity from council? Councilor Anderson.
Through the chair, I think you've answered this question already, but I couldn't hear really well. Were you saying that the other development proposal for the permanent zoning for staff housing hasn't moved along because they're waiting for an OCP amendment to be considered? Or
Yeah.
They're waiting for some movement on that and whose court is that in? Is that the sit with planning in the district? Or is it sit with the zoning thing the zoning bylaw rewrite that we're looking at? I'm just wondering where that, what needs to come into place to move that along, that part that they're waiting for.
Yeah, thanks for the question through the chair. It could be a variety of things that they're waiting for. That may be one element of it. I don't presume to know how individual landowners want to move forward with the development of their land. There's many different considerations that I'm sure they have. One of them, though, is that currently the OCP is not in support of any development on their property. And so we, as I mentioned, we should be considering that OCP amendment. Should that OCP amendment be successful, it is certainly something that would make a development proposal a lot more amenable to the applicant. But whether that's what's going to be what makes them, apply for some sort of a larger development or larger rezoning is uncertain at this time. That'll be at their discretion, of course, when the time comes.
Okay, so there's no application.
No, yeah, there's no currently there's no application.
So, right, okay, thanks.
Through the chair, if I may clarify, this property is also affected by the Ocean Interface Zone OCP amendment that council has given permission to proceed for.
I have a couple questions for you. One is, this is just a question of memory. It occurs to me, if I'm not mistaken, that this applicant has previously voluntarily dezoned their property. I recall they used to have a resort permissions and large restaurant permissions, and they voluntarily worked with staff to change that zoning. Is that correct?
Thanks for the question. That's one interpretation of it. So they did go through a rezoning process. I would say in general, it would probably be considered a downzoning. We changed their zoning from kind of a specific resort C5 zone into something that then allowed some camping as well as some cabins and those sorts of things. I would say it probably reduced the overall development potential of the law. However, again, it's hard for me to comment on how somebody might have proceeded to develop their lot or how they wouldn't have, or what the actual economics of that were. So I would say from a very kind of cursory standpoint, yes, I would 100% agree that they downsized their lots. But the feasibility of the various build out scenarios is obviously dealt in the details kind of.
Sure. Thank you. That was one question. Another question. There was two concerns, I believe, in the letter writers to oppose. One was basically, I believe, mostly concerned about the gravel and the dust. Now, with the paving of Mackenzie Beach, I assume that the traffic and the gravel in that general area will be reduced overall. That would be my general assumption. Is that your take on that?
I'm not sure that the traffic would be reduced, but maybe
the impacts of the dust from the traffic.
Yeah, I do believe that it'll be a significant reduction in the amount of dust dust and gravel moving around on.
Okay, and my next question, maybe I got two more questions actually, if you don't mind. One is the removal of trees. Now, I've noticed that there's, at times we go through the process of giving a TUP and there's some conditions, and when it comes back again, or a zoning, rezoning, or a development, whatever comes back, the follow-up perhaps is not there. Like trees were supposed to be saved, and then during the construction or whatever, they're removed. And then, is there a way to assess and then record if, in fact, trees were removed during this potential build out, if council agrees to advance this TUP and they do put 10 more units in there? The next time they come back, is there a way that we can be assured that staff will say, yes, no trees were removed, or in fact trees were removed, that would allow staff to, or allow council to debate the power of those promises, sort of thing? Is there something like that?
Yeah, certainly. I would say we can definitely work that into it and try to have some sort of regular follow-up and maybe get some sort of a tree inventory, so to speak, from the property owners, or prepared by some third-party consulting company or something like that, that then can be compared at the end of the TUP to ensure that no tree cover has actually been lost. Yeah, maybe that's sort of the easiest answer.
Yeah, I mean, I'd be just happy with the photograph, so
Yes.
this is what it looked like now, and this is what it looks like, you know, looks like not then and looks like now, you know, to say, hey, they did what they said they were gonna do, and we have some kind of record, nothing fancy. Just I was wondering if it's possible.
Yeah, no, I understand. I would say the one comment I would add is that we historically have regularly inspected TUP, particularly the, you know, kind of the trailer RV campground TUPs. That hasn't happened since probably last summer, so it's been about a year. And so we've started already scheduling some times to go in the next couple of weeks to actually do those inspections, those on-site inspections. And so at that time, it would probably be appropriate also to take a few photos and have a look around, and then we can either work that way, or if something more formal is required, we can set that up as well as that.
Okay, I'll just leave that up to council to debate if they wish to. The other one is if just noting Councillor Sawyer's comments on timing. If council in this debate and comment period says, well, we're not interested in 30, but we'll change it to 25 or 22 or whatever. Can we do that now? Or do we have to say?
The answer is yes, of course. Council can issue the TP for whatever they deem is appropriate at this point in time. My caution would be that to kind of grant something that is not what the applicant wanted would, you know, maybe kind of put them on the back foot or start coding. So my advice at that point would be for council to maybe defer the application. I can go back and have that conversation with the applicant and say, council has indicated that they're amenable, say, to 25 sites or whatever it may be, and just make the applicant aware of that to ensure that to ensure kind of transparency and communication. That would be my advice. Should council just wish to move forward, though, of course, that's at council's discretion.
Okay. We can go for a round of question, comment, or questions for
I just had one more question that in the permit conditions, that there's a few different statements that speak to fire protection, smoke alarms and fire extinguishers and so on. I'd like to make sure that that condition is actually met and inspected. But a question that arises out of that, I want to know that the area is adequately serviced with fire hydrants. So I'm assuming it is, but the report doesn't speak to that. So.
That's a good question. Is there any way to know if that area is protected? We've got enough fire hydrant service for that size of a development?
Certainly, thanks for the question. Off the top of my head, I know that there is historically some pressure issues towards the far end of Mackenzie Beach Road, so kind of at the end of the line down towards Bella Pacifica Campground with fire flows and those kinds of things. That's somewhat anecdotal. That's kind of from speaking with our engineering team. However, near the highway there where the main runs through, there's quite good pressure. And my understanding is that there is a hydrant. I can't remember exactly where it's located, but quite near that area. That's something I'm happy to follow up with council, though, because I don't actually have the information specifically in my head at this point.
I do recall seeing that in the water master plan, all the hydrants and their covered. Is there, Councillor Steer?
Just a quick question through the chair. Peter, you did say in the report with the housing agreement that would be in place and that would be further in place. And I may have misunderstood. Is that rental space? And I think that the number was $1,050 roughly. That would for the monthly rental. Is that for a trailer or is that just for the space?
My understanding is that it's for the trailer, and so the applicants would be providing the trailers. They buy the trailers and they install them there, and then they rent the whole thing. It's not just the pad.
Thank you.
Through the chair, I can just clarify for the fire hydrant. There's one directly across the road, just on Abraham, right at the corner of Abraham Highway, just across the highway.
Super. Thanks for that. That's great. Is that sufficient? Yeah. Okay. Councillor Sawyer?
Thank you. A follow-up comment on my previous question. I was just seeking clarity to understand what would happen, depending on how the vote goes today. I am in support of the 30 units, given that they have expressed there won't be any further tree clearing. I was just curious and looking for information on if the 30 or 20 had a reasoning in whether or not the TUP could be reapplied for in that way.
Super. Yeah, and just for clarity, I didn't assume anything. I was looking for options for council, not knowing that sending back, or could we change it? So it's just a question. Not a presumption. Okay. Do we need to, I think you're off the hook, Mr. Thick, and we can go for a round of comments. I'm happy to start out since I've been talking a lot. I'm in support of this. I do my couple concerns, I think, would be the letter writers, the gravel, which I think is going to be taken care of through paving. And I think that will also mitigate some of the complaints about traffic, even though the traffic will be slightly increased. Noise complaints. I'm a little concerned about noise complaints, but again, perhaps with the late night policing service that's ongoing in the summer, that can be mitigated through that. I personally would like to have the trees assessed to ensure that when this comes back, that the property applicants were compliant. And my biggest concern actually would be that we don't have a limits to growth policy, except that the timing of the loss of this TUP, the impacts to residential people's residents at a pretty critical time. I'm willing to forego that particular point, noting the very low water use, and that likely our limits to growth policy would probably allow this type of development with that low water use when it comes actually to fruition. So that's my comment. I think I'm generally in favor of this. How about I move this way?
Yeah, I'm generally in favor of this. I do feel like there's a little bit of kind of some comparing apples to oranges when it comes to the water use, because I feel like this is a trailer housing one person, whereas comparing it to a family dwelling is usually 4 people. So I feel like there's a little bit of discrepancy there, but I do know that it is still really low water usage. So I'm okay with that. And I would really like to see a tree inventory. I'm happy with a photo. I think that's really important to uphold that. And that's all my concerns.
And then we just keep going this way and then we'll go around.
Yeah, I'm in favor of this. I've known several people who've lived in that area, and sometimes it is more than one person to an RV. The people that I do know who live there enjoy it. They feel it's preferable to other options in town. And I'd like to see them be able to continue living there.
So Tom.
I fully support this. I understand there'll be a little bit of additional water usage, but as you know, it's such a small amount for the value that we'll get from having housing that is specifically dedicated for staff or people that are working in Tofino and in a certain income range, for sure. Maybe not income, but affordability, I should say. It definitely fulfills the need, and maybe, as mentioned in the presentation, RVs aren't an ideal living situation for everybody. There definitely are people who prefer it and enjoy it, and I'm happy to see this happen. And I'm satisfied to see additional housing provided that doesn't come with also seeking tourist accommodation or additional things from us. It seems to be a very simple kind of a win for us for housing.
Head over to Councilor McMaster.
Yeah, well, as you all know, I'm not a big fan of never-ending TUPs, but so I wouldn't be supporting it if it was just staying at 20 sites. So the fact that they're offering on 10 more sites, I will support it. However, if I was around and they asked for an extension, I would not be supporting another 3-year extension. So.
Yeah, I'm always a little bit reluctant to support temporary use permits. Tofino uses them more than any other municipality, that, as far as I know anyways. And Having said that, it is a good tool, in my opinion, to use if you're moving towards a zoning or whatever, waiting for some answers on an OCP or something like that. I like, that's the principle I like to apply to a temporary use permit. Is it a bridge to something, to a permanent zoning? This, not just another renewal somewhere down the road. So I will be supporting it. I think one of the most difficult types of housing to provide is staff accommodation for seasonal employees, and finding a solution that is, it has to be affordable, it has to work for a landlord as well, knowing that it might be empty for part of the year. So there's a different balance to strike when it comes to that seasonal kind of employee housing. So, I mean, this works pretty well for that. It's got a good history of that use being in place without any problems that we've known. So I'd be in support of it.
Yeah. Councillor Steele. Yeah, and I think that Councillor McMaster and Councillor Anderson have expressed the exact reasons. I mean, I will be supportive, of course, but the use of a TUP as primary purpose, and my understanding of it is that bridge to usually a rezoning, and not getting great clarity in terms of where that is going with the applicant. That's probably my biggest concern. And then you brought up the limits to growth policy that we're looking at. And I agree 100%. That's hopefully will shape some of the direction for us moving into the future. So I will be supporting this, but with the concerns around I don't want to say the abuse of the TUP process, but for its intended purpose, I would like to have seen a little more information regarding what the plans are for this applicant moving forward. This is not the first time we've seen this TUP process with this particular applicant. So without that information forward, I'll support this 3-year one, but absolutely need some more clarity coming forward. If I was here as well, I would not be supportive of renewal after this particular.
I should say too that I've actually, before the applicant has come to me and shown me potential staff housing developments for there. This was before they had an application in, and I personally understand. I personally understand you guys' position, and I'm there too. I do think right now a TUP is probably the ideal way to go because of the zoning review and rewrite that we're embarking on. It's fairly ambitious. I expect an OCP amendments. I also expect the limits to growth policy. So all of those things together, noting our crunch with water and that we're trying to find housing, all of those things together make me think that yes, there's a lot of TUPs going on, but this one's probably actually a quite decent use of an OCP or a TUP at this time. So I agree. So, but what I'm hearing is unanimous support for this at 30 units. I hear no significant objections. So with that in mind, how about would somebody like to read the motion?
I could read it then. I'll move that the temporary use permit attached to Appendix 1 to the report titled TUP 02-24-1101 Pacific Rim Highway Staff Accommodation Campground dated June 11th, 2024 be approved for issuance for a period of 3 years.
Second.
Second by Councillor Master. Comments. I should have asked this question before of staff. So I'm going to break protocol a little bit if it's all right. Or am I going to look to council? How would council like to deal with the concerns about recording trees? The applicant's intention not to cut trees. Would a staff picture suffice on the initial investigation?
I think personally, photos would be appropriate. If there's anyone in the community who would like to walk through as well and maybe lend their knowledge or their expertise. Just in pointing out trees that are important to photograph or any knowledge they might have of certain growth, I would be open to that.
Okay, I'm just gonna say, we wouldn't want to encourage people to go onto private property.
No, but to partner with staff, to
Oh, to
reach out
partner
to
with
staff
staff.
and say, I'd like to do the walkthrough, I might know something about a species of hawthorn at risk that I could point out to you.
Very well.
Yeah, Councilor Anderson.
I think this is the kind of thing that we should probably turn over to staff, maybe put out some ideas, but we're gonna get 7 different plans about how to do it if you go around the table. So instead of inventing the plan, I will get a plan back to comment on.
Sure, just for clarity, I was just wondering if we wanted to add language to this motion right now, since we're in the middle of the motion, or we can, or is council confident that staff has heard council and will, on the initial assessment, do photographs and et cetera like that. That's what I was asking. If we need to make any additions to this now, or we can read it as is. I'm looking at council.
I'm happy to leave it to staff.
I'm happy to add language specifying photos of trees, or to have staff document trees.
Okay, so this is why I kind of did this a little too soon. So I'm just gonna look to staff. We're in the middle of the motion, but does staff need a motion to do that, or can staff include that in the initial assessment of the site? What would be your preference?
I can feel fairly comfortable understanding, hearing what council has said, and providing sort of a small report almost with various photos and things like that of the site, of the area around it, those sorts of things, if that's sufficient. I understand how challenging it can be to craft a motion on the fly. So if that's acceptable, then I've heard you and I understand. But if you feel like you need to add language, I completely fine with that.
Okay, I'm happy with that. If we're gonna go with that, that's fine by me. So any further comments from council before I call the question? Is everybody okay? Okay, all in favor? None opposed, motion is carried. Thank you. .4 annual municipal report. Comments? Questions? Yes, Councillor Sloman.
And under my little blurb, it says that my Tofino Tourism Board position is non-voting and I am voting.
I was under the understanding that you're not.
I vote. They've said I'm one of the only voting members.
Only non-voting members.
No, I'm one of the only voting members appointed by district on their board, like compared to other tourism board.
Tell you what, let's take that offline and have just let you deal with it instead. Because I wasn't the person you're non-voting. You could ask right now, since we're just receiving it. We can deal with that perhaps. Mr. McCall.
Yes, through the chair. I can provide a summary to Councillor Sloman with a follow-up. But just a reminder for council, section 167 of the community charter requires municipalities to publish an annual report, which states their goals and objectives for the coming year and demonstrates what progress is being made towards the preceding year's objectives and goals. The list of requirements includes the annual audited financial statements, a list of permissive tax exemptions, a report on the municipality's services and operations, progress reports on the performance of the municipality with respect to established objectives and measures, and any other information that council deems appropriate. As required, staff have made this report available for public inspection for 14 days prior to this meeting, including 2 consecutive advertisement appearances in the Westerly News, a website post, and a social media post. The motion in council's agenda package tonight is required to be read prior to accepting questions or submissions from the public tonight. So once council has passed that motion, staff will make an open call for the gallery and online for public comment prior to council reading the final motion.
Super, thank you. That's great. Great, and we'll go ahead and do that in a sec, but just because there was a question from Councillor Sloman, can we go ahead and receive that even if that is that particular point is unclear? Whether or not Councillor Sloman is a voting member of the Tourism Committee Board or not.
I can briefly check the terms of reference.
Not sure if we have to amend the, because it is, we're asking the public to comment on it. It's a little bit of a nitpicky thing, but.
I'm also unaware of that, but I can get back to council on that. The deadline for this annual municipal report is June 30th, so I'm happy to bring the report back to council on the 25th council meeting. They choose so.
But we can go ahead and read the motion and have people comment on it.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right, if there's no further ado from council, I will, would somebody like to go ahead and read the first recommendation?
I will. I move that members of the public wishing to ask questions or make submissions regarding the District of Tofino 2023 annual municipal report be permitted to address council.
Second.
Seconded by Councillor Master. Further comments? All in favor? None opposed, motion carried. Okay, go ahead.
Excellent. I will now do no call for public comment. If you're attending via Zoom or in the gallery here, would like to ask a question or make a comment on the 2023 annual municipal report, please raise your hand. Going once, going twice, going 3 times. There are no current requests.
Super. Seeing that, would somebody like to read the second recommendation?
I can. I move that the District of Tofino 2023 annual municipal report be received.
Second.
Councillor McMaster, seconded. All in favor? None opposed, motion is carried.
And just through the chair, Sam Hackett is actually attending and has just chimed in to determine that yes, she is a voting member.
Fantastic. That's great. So if that's the case, what does the actual report say?
Says I'm non-voting.
You're non-voting, so maybe we'll get a correction. Super. Okay, moving on to 10.5, we have the Tla-o-qui-aht Parade for 2024 road closure. We have a report.
No presentation from staff. This would typically go on the consent agenda, but was a late item, so is appearing on the regular agenda.
Super.
I move that the temporary street closure as outlined in the staff report, the Tla-o-qui-aht Parade 2024 dated June 11, 2024 be approved to accommodate the Tla-o-qui-aht Parade 2024 event scheduled to be held June 21st, 2024 between the hours of 9:30 a.m. and 11 a.m.
Second by Councillor Thomas. Any further comments? Look forward to this. All in favor? None opposed, motion is carried. We have bylaws for adoption, District of Tofino meeting procedure bylaw.
I'll move that the District of Tofino meeting procedure amendment bylaw number 1229.04 2024 be adopted.
Second.
Second by Councillor McMaster. Any further comment? All in favor? None opposed, motion is carried. We have business initiated by council members. Love to hear from those who attended the Tofino Housing Corporation.
Yeah, I'll start. Yeah, it was on Friday for the opening of headquarters. It was attended by Josie Osborne, who was a former chair of the housing committee and mayor, of course, and Gord Johns and members of BC Housing. First of all, I'd like to thank staff for doing a great job of setting it all up. I know BC Housing made lots of demands as to what they wanted to see on the day, and I think staff did a great job. Thankfully, they were backed up by great weather. Which was the weather was a lot better than when we opened Creekside, and the food was good, and the speeches were excellent by everybody, and probably the best speech, which brought a tear to everybody's eye, was the one that was made by one of the tenants of Headwaters, which was great. And as many of you know, I've always thought the Pope Laureate was a bit of a foo-foo position, but I thought that was one of the better poems I've actually heard. So that was great. And Just where we go from next is the big question after headwaters.
Yeah, well, I would have attended anyways, but I was attending on behalf of Mayor Law as acting mayor and spoke as you would have spoke to the extent that I can. It was a very celebratory moment for me personally, as I've been working towards seeing better and more affordable housing come to Tofino for a long time. So I acknowledged in my speech the past members of Tofino Housing Corporation and past councils that have supported it through the years. Acknowledged that the district operates within the Tla-o-qui-aht and the Tla-o-qui-aht people, and thank them. And also thank the neighborhood for putting up with a construction project that did extend upwards of 2 years anyway. So those were my main acknowledgements. We had a great blessing given by Levi, member of Tla-o-qui-aht, that invoked the ancestors from the 4 directions, and Kelly Lynn, our executive director, helped him with the ceremony and casting eagle down. And it was quite moving in many regards, and that being a highlight, as well as the speakers that Councillor McMaster has mentioned. So I was glad to attend on your behalf, Mayor Law.
Well, I was happy to have you there. Thanks. It's great. Any other business initiated by council members in reports? Councillor Steer?
Yeah, I have a couple with the Nudge Community School Society board meeting on May 29th. Just a quick update there. We have an MOU that was signed with School District 70, and so that had implications for the board and the Nudge Community School Society. They met with staff as a recommendation, and my understanding of that meeting went super well. Progress moving forward. In terms of the society itself, their programming is still being really well attended. Wide diversity, 24 different programs, 14 different types. Average of 25 students per day at each of those programs. So that's going really well, and we're looking forward to that relationship with that MOU with SD70. ACRD board meeting tomorrow. We had the West Coast committee meeting on June 5th. There was some conversation around the West Coast Transit Service. There had been a few issues around staffing and scheduling. There were some suggestions on how to alleviate that. It's mostly around labor issues, and there's a gap in there. So there's a lot of feedback that had been incorporated, and the recommendation up to the board is to incorporate a service change in terms of basically they're going to drop the morning one. There was a big gap in the afternoon, so there was some labor issues around that, and then extend into the evening. So I think that feedback will go back to the board tomorrow, and we'll make a decision on that. And just for council's information, we've had the trend is moving this way. So in the 7 weeks that we have the data for, started week 1 was 106, and we now have 371 people per week riding the service, on average over 50 people a day. So excellent news there. There's some other issues around service delivery in Millstream, and that's going to be addressed in a more comprehensive way as we go forward. As you know, the province has increased the servicing hours available for that project. So one of the conversations at UBCM, I think, will be through the ACRD, will be further conversation with BC Transit. The West Coast landfill annual.
So can I interrupt you because I do have a question about the transportation.
Yeah.
Or the West Coast Transit. Did you say that they were going to drop the morning? Is that
There's a very early, so there was almost zero ridership on the 6:31, and then there was a huge gap in the middle of the day. So they were having some labor issues around that. So the feedback that was coming back from the users, as well as the service provider, was to drop that. So that's part of that, part of there. So they'll make adjustments as they go. These are the hurdles that we anticipated in terms of the service delivery. And they'll look to optimize that service moving forward. So that's the intent of it right now. That answer your question?
Well, we're getting into debate here. I was on the transportation committee and we suggested they wait until the demographics came back. They got to add it to see who was on that morning, 7:30 run from debate. So that's why I'm.
Yeah, there's a 6:30 is the one that I was told. I may have had the time wrong.
Okay. Oh, chat.
0630. There were some people because of the labor issues had been left stranded, so they wanted to address that, make sure that never ever happens again. So we all supported that never ever happening again. So yeah, we can chat offline if need be. That will be going to the board meeting tomorrow as the West Coast Committee's recommendation to the board. The transportation group, there was some comment on, there was some feedback that had come back from them as well, but there was no detail on that. The landfill annual report, it's my favorite one. Nobody here really probably cares, but it is incredibly important service that's provided to we just all throw our trash in the garbage and we forget about it, but it's a tremendous amount of work. The good news is we are trending in the right direction in terms of our landfill waste. Waste is an interesting term because it originally was devised because it was wasted, and so it's perceived as, man, we should be doing something about it. So we call it waste, but really the intent of it is because why are we wasting it? So anyways, the total landfill waste was 6,240 tons. It's a 12% decrease from 2022. Regionally, we're the high end of our garbage. We produce 526 kilograms per person per year. The provincial kind of goal is be looking at around 350 kilograms. So we are trending in the right direction. There has been a slight decrease. We just had a 5-hour solid waste management advisory. We're revamping our solid waste management plan for the region. That's as co-chair of that advisory panel. It's going to be a 2-year process. We've deep into that 30,000-foot level conversation. We're now narrowing in on those targets and goals, and we're expecting to have that plan completed by 2025. Yeah, well, that's the most significant things. Are the other small items on there, but some of the big ticket items that have been coming forward on the West Coast. And I forgot, the multiple use path celebration was on the same day as the housing. So the big ribbon cutting, Josie made it out there for that one too. So it's a huge, we are now all connected. The trail is now connected from A to B. That was a long time coming. There's a lot of grant applications denied and got forward. So we're super happy that we have a multiple use path that stretches from Tofino to Tla-o-qui-aht.
Super.
That's it.
The business council members.
Shorter report. We had a Vancouver Island Regional Library Board meeting this past Saturday. It was good, lots of conversation. Unfortunately, attendeeship was quite low due to FCM. So we had to adjourn when we lost quorum. But there will be follow-up conversations coming out of that and hopefully great news to share.
Super. All right. Last call. Hearing nothing. We're move on to question period. Mr. McCall, do we have anybody signed up for question period?
Thank you, Mayor Law. I will now do a call for questions. If anyone is online or in the gallery, wish to make a question to an agenda item, please state your name, the agenda item you're speaking to, and your address. I'll now do an open call going once, going twice. Oh, once.
We'll do the one online first, and then we've got a couple people in the
Okay.
audience, residents in the audience who'd like to speak.
Excellent. No current questions online.
Super. So then we'll move to gallery.
Anyone in the gallery? Going once, twice. Absolutely. Please proceed to the podium. You can state your name, your address, and the agenda item you're speaking to.
My name is Vern Becker. My address is 640 Mackenzie Beach Road, right on the corner of Mackenzie Beach. One thing I want to point out is there is not enough water for if you fight a fire, because we've had problems with fighting fires on Pools Land, and we ran out of water and it's too far. The hydros are too far apart. There's one at the top and one at the bottom, and it just doesn't provide enough water. It's fine if it's just one small RV, but if it's a big house, I've been on the fire department for 10 years and we've ran into that problem a couple times. So the other thing I want to do is, I'm not really happy with the expansion across the street. But I understand that we do need staff housing. So.
Sure, maybe we'll, this is question period, so if you have a question for council members, I'm happy to hear. Would you like to ask a question of council members, or?
Well, when they first applied, they asked for 20, and council at that time said that's all it's going to be. So now it's 30. So that's my only question. We've had a lot of problems with our neighbor, Mr. Poole, over the 30 years I lived there, so.
Let's see.
Okay.
Okay, thank you.
That's it.
Sure.
Okay.
Question period. Mr. Rudd, please make it a question.
Warren Rudd, Arnett Road. I was led to believe that there was an agenda item to approve a permit, an event permit for Dana Lyons concert. Today, can that be put back on the agenda?
It went through the consent agenda through the chair.
Stop. Did I miss it?
So we have what we have is we have a consent agenda where we put recommendations that show that probably will elicit no major discussion or contention. And so what we do is we publish those, and any councillor has the ability to pull those out of the consent agenda for discussion. And most of the cases, those remain in consent agenda. That makes our meeting go more efficiently and quicker.
Sorry to make the meeting long.
That's a good question. That's a good question.
I learned something.
Yeah. Any further questions from members of the public? Okay, seeing none, then I'll move from the chair into the closed session, and then we'll have a break. I recommend that the meeting close to the public pursuant to sections 91 AC and 92B of the community charter to discuss matters related to 1A, personal information about an individual who holds or is being considered a position as an officer, employee, or agent. 1C, employee relations. 2B, the consideration of information received and held in confidence relating to negotiations between the municipality and provincial government or the federal government, or between the provincial government or the federal government, or both, and a third party. Second by Councillor Thomas. Any further questions? Comments? All in favor? Unopposed, motion carried. We're going to the closed session, and we're going to take a 5-minute break. And then we'll close the session to the public.